something I'm familiar with at all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dame Diana. Joanna Cherry for the Human Rights Committee.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Prime Minister. If we can continue with questions about your Rwanda policy. The Joint Committee on Human Rights concluded that the Rwanda Bill does not comply with the UK's human rights obligations and that it would place the UK in breach of international law. And we observed that other nations might be influenced by the way in which the UK treats its international obligations. And we pointed to the example of the interim Prime Minister of Pakistan, who has referred to the UK's Rwanda policy in defence of his country's decision to expel from Pakistan hundreds of thousands of Afghans who fled from the Taliban regime. Are you proud that he used your Rwanda policy to justify doing that?
Well, I'm obviously not responsible for the comments of a person in another country, so I think that's a slightly bizarre thing to say. But what I can say is I'm very confident that our Rwanda scheme is in compliance with all our international obligations, and we've worked very hard to ensure that that's the case. And in fact, the principle of sending people to Rwanda as a safe country was a principle that was supported by the High Court and not challenged by the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court, and in accordance with the Refugee Convention. So I said I'm very clear on what we're doing and why what we're doing is right.
Dame Diana mentioned that there's evidence that quite a high number of people fleeing the Taliban regime are reaching the United Kingdom's shore on small boats. Are you proud that your members of Parliament were whipped against voting for an amendment that would have prevented Afghans who had aided or supported His Majesty's Armed Forces in Afghanistan from being sent to Rwanda? Is that something that makes you proud?
I really disagree with that characterisation, and given we've just had all these debates in Parliament about Opposition Day debates and what they do to MPs and intimidation, I actually think characterising like that is deeply unhelpful. Look, we have a plan. I'll answer the question.
I resent your characterisation. I'm asking you a perfectly reasonable question.
There
are people coming to our shores
your framing
who have
of the
previously aided and abetted
you've asked the question,
and
I would appreciate the opportunity to answer it.
And you whipped your MPs against an amendment which would have prevented them from being deported to Rwanda. I'm asking you whether you're proud of that policy. That's all I'm asking.
Now hear from the Prime Minister. You've interrupted him twice.
We have a very clear obligation to make sure that we support those who aided us in Afghanistan, and we are delivering on that. We have multiple different schemes, which I've discussed in this committee in the past, 3 strands of them. Those schemes are operating and bringing thousands of Afghans safely to the UK in a way which is sustainable and where we can provide them with the appropriate support they need when they are here. And that is part of a broader approach that has welcomed 500,000 refugees to this country from varying different countries over the past several years. So we have a proud and compassionate record of making sure we support people who need that help, but it needs to be done in a legal way, and it needs to be done in a way that is sustainable for local communities and for the individuals concerned, so that we can provide them with the support that we need. And that's why we believe that our schemes, whether that's ARIP or ARCS, are the right way to do that. Other people will have their views, but we believe our way is the right way, and that's because we do believe we have an obligation and we're delivering on it.
The Home Office have prepared a 137-page long country information note on human rights in Rwanda, and it was recently updated in January, and it collates sources ranging from the US State Department to Human Rights Watch, which set out very grave shortcomings in the protection of human rights in Rwanda. Can you explain to me why it is that you feel able to ignore reliable information collated by your own Home Office in insisting that Rwanda is a safe country?
Because we have a new agreement with Rwanda that gives us the assurance that we need that people's rights will be respected, and we're also supporting them to improve the processing of people's claims. I would also make the point, as I reiterated earlier, the High Court did find that it was generally safe for individuals to be relocated under the MEDP in Rwanda, and that wasn't challenged by the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court. And the treaty that we now have makes further clear that all the obligations will be met of all individuals and without discrimination. I'd also say the constitution of Rwanda includes a broad prohibition of discrimination. It does not criminalise or discriminate against aspects that have been raised, and Rwanda itself is passing new laws on asylum processing. So for all those reasons, we are confident that this policy is the right one and is deliverable within all our obligations, and I've had commitments from the President down that they are absolutely determined to make this work.
On that point, I think where you and I could agree is that the United Kingdom has some of the best human rights and equality protections in the world for people who are same-sex attracted or people who are transgender. But it's a matter of fact that there are no such laws in Rwanda, and indeed the Foreign Office travel advice for Rwanda warns, and I quote, that individuals can experience discrimination and abuse, including from local authorities. There are no specific anti-discrimination laws that protect LGBT individuals. Why then do you think it would be safe to send LGBT asylum seekers to Rwanda?
I can just refer to my previous answer. The Constitution of Rwanda includes a broad prohibition of discrimination, and it doesn't criminalise or discriminate against sexual orientation in law or indeed in policy. We do have a legally binding treaty which makes clear that obligations will be met in terms of treating people without discrimination as well. But finally, the bill means that UK decision makers will always be able to consider compelling evidence relating specifically to an individual's particular circumstances, whilst respecting the fact that our courts themselves have agreed with the government's view that Rwanda is generally safe for individuals relocated.
Just very briefly on that, if Rwanda is as safe as you say, and if you have no concerns about human rights protections from Rwanda, notwithstanding the Home Office's concerns, in what way do you expect the scheme to be a deterrent?
Because people will not be able to reside and remain in the UK. And what we've seen from the situation with our Albanian deal is that once we have a functioning returns agreement, that means that we can return people who come here illegally back to a different country, you see the arrivals drop, as they have done by over 90% from Albania. And if you look at how other countries, for example Australia, have dealt with this, it has also been found to work. That's why I'm confident that deterrence works, and without question, this is a novel thing to do, but we do need to look at novel and bold solutions to a situation which otherwise will just continue to get worse. I don't think that's right, I don't think that's fair, and I don't think that's compassionate, because as we just saw weeks ago, people are tragically dying when they're exploited by gangs making these crossings. So for all sorts of reasons, the right thing to do is to break that cycle. Having an effective deterrent is critical to that. Indeed, the National Crime Agency has also agreed that having a deterrent is key.
Thank you, Joanna Cherry. And now we're moving into the